What if I told you that some of the most powerful healers in the natural world are not locked away in expensive bottles, hidden behind pharmacy counters, or promoted by billion-dollar industries, but growing quietly on roadsides, in old gardens, along riverbanks, and in places modern life taught you to ignore? And what if I told you that before this video ends, you are going to discover why a humble plant like blue vervain was once treasured for calming the nervous system when life pushed people to the edge, and why the final plant on this list was so valued for pain, fever, and inflammation that entire generations treated it like a natural answer to suffering, long before modern medicine took over the conversation. Most people have been trained to believe healing has to be complicated, branded, and expensive. But our ancestors knew something we forgot. They knew that the earth has always offered remedies for wounds, lungs, digestion, fever, pain, inflammation, and even emotional exhaustion. The tragedy is not that these plants disappeared. The tragedy is that people stopped looking. So before we begin, subscribe to the channel and stay with me all the way to the end, because these 20 forgotten medicinal plants are not just fascinating pieces of herbal history. They may completely change the way you think about healing, self-reliance, and what your own backyard is capable of. Let us begin with Calendula, the golden flower that looks soft and cheerful but hides a remarkable medicinal reputation. Ancient Mediterranean healers prized Calendula for cuts, burns, inflamed skin, and infections. In old European folk medicine, these bright orange petals were often infused into oils, salves, and washes because people noticed wounds seemed to calm down, dry up, and mend faster when calendula was involved. Today, science gives us a clearer explanation. Calendula contains flavonoids, triterpenoids, carotenoids, and volatile compounds that support anti-inflammatory activity, tissue repair, and microbial defense. In simpler terms, it helps create the kind of environment skin needs to recover. And yet modern society overlooked it because skincare became commercialized. Instead of teaching people to respect a flower that could soothe irritation and support healing, the market sold them synthetic creams with glossy labels and complicated promises. Calendula stayed where it always was, quietly doing its work, while the world chased branding. Then there is sea buckthorn, one of the most nutrient-dense plants on this entire list. For centuries, sea buckthorn was treasured across Asia and parts of Europe, especially in Tibetan, Mongolian, and traditional folk practices. Warriors reportedly used it to strengthen the body and support recovery, and healers valued its berries and oils for skin, digestion, and vitality. Modern analysis shows exactly why. Sea buckthorn is packed with vitamin C, vitamin E, carotenoids, flavonoids, and rare fatty acids, including omega-7, a compound often associated with skin and mucous membrane support. That means it can help nourish tissues from the inside out, supporting the mouth, throat, gut lining, and skin. In a world full of damage from processed food, polluted air, and chronic inflammation, this berry should be famous. But it is not, because it does not fit neatly into the convenience culture. It is wild, tart, traditional, and a little too honest for a world that prefers a sugar-coated multivitamin over a plant that actually earned its reputation. Now we come to Comfrey, one of the most controversial and powerful herbs in Old World healing. Comfrey was once known as knitbone for a reason. Traditional herbalists used it externally for bruises, sprains, fractures, joint pain, and tissue damage. It was considered one of the great allies for helping the body rebuild after injury. The reason lies in compounds like allantoin, which is associated with cell proliferation and tissue repair, along with rosmarinic acid and other soothing constituents that calm inflammation. Ancient healers did not need laboratory charts to tell them what they could already see. Comfrey poultices were famous because they worked. But modern society forgot Comfrey partly because nuance disappeared. Instead of teaching people the difference between wise external use and careless misuse, the culture often pushed everything into two extremes, miracle or danger, approved or forbidden. And once that happened, centuries of practical herbal wisdom got shoved aside. Mullein may look like a tall roadside weed, but it has one of the richest respiratory histories in herbal tradition. In Europe and North America, mullein leaves and flowers were used for coughs, bronchial irritation, throat discomfort, and lung congestion. People made teas, syrups, oils, and steam infusions because mullein had a reputation for soothing dry, angry airways while also helping move out stubborn mucus. Modern science points to saponins, mucilage, and flavonoids as part of the explanation. Mucilage helps coat and soothe irritated tissues, while saponins may help the body loosen congestion. In a time when people are breathing smoke, pollutants, and chemical irritants every single day, mullein should be part of every natural wellness conversation. But it was forgotten because it looks too ordinary. Modern people were taught to dismiss plants that grow easily. If it is not exotic, patented, and sold at a premium, they assume it cannot be powerful. Mullein is proof that this mindset is not wisdom, it is marketing. And that brings us to plantain, not the banana-like fruit, but Plantago major, one of the most underestimated healing plants on Earth. This is the plant many children once learned to crush and place on bee stings, bug bites, splinters, and cuts. Traditional herbalists used it for wounds, skin irritation, inflammation, and even internal soothing for the digestive tract. Plantain contains aucubin, allantoin, tannins, and mucilage, making it both soothing and protective. It can help calm inflamed tissue, draw out minor irritants, and support skin repair. Some traditions even viewed it as a natural drawing herb, almost like the plant knows how to pull trouble to the surface. Why was it forgotten? Because it grows in lawns, cracks, and paths, which means modern culture labeled it a weed. And once something is called a weed, most people stop asking whether it has value. They kill it without realizing their ancestors might have reached for it before anything else. If you are already noticing a pattern, you are right. The plants that heal are often the ones civilization mocked, sprayed, ignored, or paved over. And we are only getting started, because the next few herbs become even more fascinating, especially when you see how they were used in battlefields, village medicine, and traditions that survived long before industrial healthcare arrived. Yarrow is one of those plants that carries the aura of a warrior. Its history stretches back through Europe, Asia, and indigenous traditions, and it was famously linked to battlefield care because it was used to help stop bleeding and support wound management. Even its botanical relatives have been associated with resilience and survival. Yarrow contains achillene, flavonoids, tannins, and volatile oils that contribute to its reputation for astringency, circulation support, and anti-inflammatory action. This is the kind of herb that ancient healers respected because it seemed to do several things at once. It could help with cuts, bruises, fevers, digestion, and even menstrual balance in traditional use. The reason people forgot yarrow is simple. Modern life separated healing into tiny compartments, one product for this, one prescription for that, one specialist for each body part. Yarrow belongs to an older system of thinking where the body was treated as a connected whole. Self-heal, also known as Prunella vulgaris, has one of the most revealing names in all of herbal medicine. Imagine how powerful a plant's reputation had to be for people to literally call it self-heal. Across Europe and Asia, it was used for sore throats, mouth issues, minor wounds, skin irritation, and inflammatory conditions. It was one of those humble herbs village healers trusted because it kept showing up in the right moments. Modern research points to rosmarinic acid, ursolic acid, flavonoids, and polysaccharides that may support immune function and reduce inflammation. In other words, self-heal may help the body regulate stress and irritation rather than just suppressing symptoms. Why did it fade from public awareness? Because it is low profile, it is not dramatic, it does not come with celebrity endorsements. It simply grows, heals, and asks for very little attention, which in today's world is often the fastest way to be ignored. Agrimony is another old herbal ally that once had far more respect than it gets today. In traditional European medicine, agrimony was used for the digestive system, sore throats, mild diarrhea, skin conditions, and general toning of tissues. There is something elegant about agrimony. It was never the loudest herb in the room, but people valued it for drawing excess out, tightening what had become too loose, and restoring order when the body felt irritated or overstimulated. Its tannins, flavonoids, and bitters help explain why. Agrimony has a gentle astringent quality, which can be useful when tissues are inflamed and leaking too much, whether in the throat, gut, or skin. So why was it forgotten? Because modern consumers tend to chase extremes. They want instant stimulation or instant sedation. Agrimony works more like an old wise teacher, not a flashy salesman. It nudges the body back toward balance, and that kind of subtle intelligence is often invisible to a culture addicted to immediate results. White Horehound was once a household remedy for coughs and troubled breathing. Ancient Egyptians reportedly knew it. Traditional European medicine certainly respected it. This bitter grey-green herb became famous for soothing the throat, supporting the lungs, and helping with stubborn coughs that refused to leave. The key compound often discussed is marubian, along with volatile oils and bitter principles that may support mucous movement and respiratory comfort. White Horehound also stimulates digestion through its bitterness, which reminds us of something modern health culture often ignores. The lungs, throat and gut are deeply connected. Yet White Horehound was pushed aside because bitterness went out of fashion. Industrial food trained people to expect everything sweet, soft and easy. Herbs that tasted medicinal were seen as unpleasant relics instead of potent tools. But sometimes bitterness is exactly what wakes the body up. Boneset may have one of the most striking names on this list, and it earned that reputation in times when fevers, body aches, and seasonal illness swept through communities with terrifying force. Indigenous and early American herbal traditions used boneset especially for feverish conditions, deep body pain, and immune stress. People described illnesses so severe it felt like their bones were breaking, and boneset became one of the herbs they reached for. Modern science identifies sesquiterpene lactones, flavonoids, and polysaccharides that may contribute to immune modulation and anti-inflammatory effects. That does not make it magic. It makes it a serious traditional herb with a serious history. So why is it absent from most conversations today? Because fever management became medicalized and standardized, and anything outside the approved system was treated as primitive, even when it had generations of evidence behind it. Boneset reminds us that being old does not mean being useless. Sometimes it means being tested by time. Blue Vervain is where this list takes a turn that many people desperately need. This plant was honoured in both European and indigenous traditions, often associated with nervous tension, emotional overload, headaches, and the kind of internal pressure that builds when a person has been carrying too much for too long. Blue Vervain contains iridoid glycosides, flavonoids, and bitter compounds that may help support the nervous system, calm tension, and encourage a more grounded internal state. This is the kind of herb our overstimulated society should be talking about every single day. People are exhausted, anxious, wired, inflamed, and spiritually drained. But instead of rebuilding their relationship with calming, restorative plants, many are trapped in a cycle of caffeine by day and sedation by night. Blue Vervain was forgotten because it does not fit the productivity machine. It invites you to slow down, unclench, and listen to the signals your body has been screaming. And before we go further, this is the perfect moment to say something practical. A lot of people hear about herbs like these and immediately wonder where to find them. Some can be grown at home. Some can be sourced from trusted herbal farms, reputable apothecaries, or high-quality loose herb suppliers. Some may even be growing wild depending on where you live, though wild harvesting should only be done with certainty and respect. The key is not buying the trendiest package. The key is learning the plant, the source, and the preparation. If this kind of old-school healing wisdom speaks to you, subscribe right now, because the second half of this list gets even more powerful, and the final plant may completely reframe how you think about pain and inflammation. Elecampane has been treasured for centuries as a respiratory and digestive powerhouse. Its long history stretches through Europe and Western Asia, where the root was used for coughs, mucous congestion, sluggish digestion, and overall weakness after illness. Ancient healers often saw elecampane as a plant that helped bring strength back into the chest and core of the body. Modern science points to compounds such as inulin, allantoglactone, and other sesquiterpene lactones that may support the respiratory tract and influence microbial balance. Inulin also has prebiotic value, which means elecampane does not just work in one isolated area. It may support the internal environment in broader ways. Why did society let it fade? Because roots require patience. They need preparation, decoctions, extracts, old methods. Convenience culture does not love roots, it loves pills, powders and promises. Elecampane belongs to a slower, deeper tradition of healing, and that is exactly why it matters. Toothache plant, also known as Spilanthes, is one of the most unforgettable herbs once you experience it. Traditional communities in South America and elsewhere used it for oral discomfort, infections, and immune support. When you chew the flower, it creates a tingling, numbing, almost electric sensation in the mouth. That is not folklore. That is chemistry. The compound spilanthal is largely responsible, and it has been studied for its distinctive effects on oral tissues and inflammation. This plant became famous because it gave immediate sensory feedback. You knew it was doing something. In a world where people are desperate for fast relief, toothache plant should be a legend. But modern society forgot it because oral care was handed over almost entirely to commercial products and institutional systems. People stopped seeing the mouth as part of herbal medicine, even though traditional healers never made that mistake. Oregon grape is one of the great bitter healers of North American herbal practice. Its bright yellow root contains berberine, a compound that has attracted strong scientific interest for its role in microbial balance, metabolic support and digestive health. Long before modern labs took notice, traditional herbalists used Oregon grape for sluggish digestion, skin troubles, and states of internal stagnation that seem to show up on the surface as rashes, dullness, or imbalance. This plant speaks to an older truth that the skin and gut are not separate stories. When the inside is burdened, the outside often shows it. So why is Oregon grape not famous outside herbal circles? Because modern medicine tends to break the body into departments, while herbal traditions often look for patterns. Oregon grape was forgotten, not because it stopped working, but because the worldview that understood it was pushed aside. Yellow dock may not sound glamorous, but few herbs speak more clearly to the idea of restoring flow. Traditional Western herbalism used yellow dock for digestion, sluggish elimination, skin conditions, and mineral support, especially when people seemed pale, stagnant, or depleted. It contains anthraquinones, tannins, and minerals, and it was often seen as a plant that gently encouraged the body to clear what it had been holding too long. Some herbalists also valued it in formulas for iron assimilation and nourishment, especially when paired wisely with other plants. Yet society forgot yellow dock because the modern mindset became embarrassed by the body's basic functions. Digestion, elimination, detoxification, mineral rebuilding, these are not glamorous topics, but they are central to health. Yellow dock reminds us that true healing is not always dramatic. Sometimes it starts by getting things moving again. Usnea, the pale hanging lichen sometimes called old man's beard, feels like something out of myth. It drapes from trees in quiet forests and looks more like an ancient talisman than medicine. And yet traditional healers in various regions valued usnea for infections, wounds, throat irritation, and immune support. The compound most often discussed is usnic acid, along with other constituents that contribute to its reputation in herbal antimicrobial preparations. Usnea became important because it offered support in situations where the body seemed under microbial siege. But this is exactly why modern society forgot it. It grows in wild places, asks for ecological awareness, and does not fit the industrial model of medicine. A lichen hanging from a branch cannot be marketed as easily as a product built in a laboratory. Still, the forest kept its secret, waiting for people curious enough to look up. Barberry is another berberine-rich plant with a long medicinal history across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. Traditional healers used the bark, root, and berries in different ways for digestion, liver support, microbial imbalance, and overall cleansing. Barberry was often considered sharp, cooling, and corrective, a plant that could cut through heat and stagnation. Modern research into berberine helps explain why herbs like barberry and Oregon grape earn such respect. This compound is associated with metabolic health, digestive support, and microbial regulation. Yet barberry slipped from common knowledge because the average person today does not think in terms of bitter tonics, organ support, or restoring internal terrain. They think in terms of symptom suppression. Barberry belongs to a more strategic, long view of health, and that long view has been systematically replaced by short-term fixes. Red clover may look delicate, but it has a deeply rooted reputation as a blood purifier, skin ally, and women's herb in traditional European and American herbalism. It was used in teas and tonics for chronic skin issues, respiratory irritation, and hormonal transitions. Modern science points to isoflavones, flavonoids, and other phytonutrients that help explain its role in supporting tissues, circulation, and hormonal balance. Red clover became beloved because it was gentle enough for long-term support while still having a meaningful effect. But this is exactly why it became less visible in the modern age. Gentleness does not sell as well as intensity. A nourishing alternative herb that works over time is easy to dismiss in a culture obsessed with immediate visible impact. Yet red clover teaches a profound lesson. Some healing happens not by force, but by steadily improving the terrain of the body until symptoms no longer have the same place to thrive. Now we are approaching the final stretch, and if you have stayed with me this far, you are beginning to see something that modern culture rarely admits. Our ancestors were not foolish because they used plants. In many ways, they were observant in ways we no longer are. They knew patterns, they watched results, they learned from the land. And the two plants on this list carry that wisdom in especially unforgettable ways. Sassafras once held an almost legendary place in North American herbal tradition. Indigenous peoples and early settlers used different parts of the plant for circulation, joint discomfort, skin issues, and spring tonics meant to wake the body up after a long stagnant season. Sassafras was associated with cleansing, warming, and movement. It contains aromatic compounds that gave it both a distinctive flavor and a striking medicinal identity. Over time, sassafras became controversial, and much of its nuanced traditional use was flattened into fear, misunderstanding, and broad avoidance. This is one of the great tragedies of modern wellness culture. Instead of educating people with context, dosage awareness, and respect for preparation, the conversation often swings wildly from celebration to demonization. Sassafras was not forgotten because it lacked value. It was forgotten because modern society lost the ability to talk about plants intelligently. And finally, we come to meadowsweet, the herb that deserves the closing throne on this list. Long before synthetic pain relievers dominated medicine cabinets, meadowsweet was revered in Europe for pain, fever, inflammation, and digestive discomfort. It was a plant of both comfort and intelligence, soothing the body while easing some of the very symptoms that make people reach for quick relief today. Meadowsweet contains salicylate-related compounds, flavonoids, and tannins, which help explain its long-standing use for aches, heat, and irritation. But here is what makes meadowsweet especially remarkable. Traditional herbalists often valued it not just for relief, but for the way it could calm discomfort while also supporting the stomach more gently than the harsh approaches that later became common. Think about that for a moment. The final plant on this list represents a truth modern culture still struggles with. Nature often offered a wiser first draft. Then industry came in, isolated, concentrated, patented, and repackaged the idea. Meadowsweet was overlooked because people forgot the source and became loyal to the imitation. So what have these 20 forgotten medicinal plants really shown us? They have shown us that healing did not begin in a laboratory. It began with observation, humility, and a relationship with the living world. Calendula for the skin, sea buckthorn for deep nourishment, Comfrey for repair, Mullein for the lungs, Plantain for drawing and soothing, Yarrow for wounds and circulation, Self-heal for resilience, Agrimony for tone and balance, White Horehound for the throat and chest, Boneset for those crushing feverish states, Blue Vervain for the burdened nervous system, Elecampane for the chest and gut, Toothache plant for the mouth, Oregon grape and barberry for bitter internal correction, Yellow dock for sluggish stagnation, US knee for microbial defense, Red clover for slow deep nourishment, Sassafras for movement, and meadowsweet for pain and inflammation, standing at the end like a reminder that the old ways were not as primitive as we were taught. The real question is not whether these plants existed. They still do. The real question is why we were trained to forget them. Why were people taught to laugh at weeds, fear ancestral knowledge, and place blind trust in systems that often treat symptoms while ignoring the conditions that created them? That does not mean rejecting modern medicine. It means refusing to act as though modern medicine is the only source of wisdom. The strongest position is not blind faith in the old world or the new one. It is discernment. It is knowing that real power comes from understanding both. So now I want to hear from you. Which of these forgotten medicinal plants surprised you the most, and which one would you want to learn about or try growing first? Leave your answer in the comments because I read them and they shape what comes next on this channel. And if this video opened your eyes to how much healing knowledge has been buried under convenience, commerce, and cultural amnesia, subscribe and stay with us. There is a whole world of forgotten natural wisdom waiting to be rediscovered, and this was only the beginning.